Started in Wuhan, China, 2020 is marked with the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak all over the world. Of course, we can't forget, when the coronavirus started to spread out and infected a few people in a country, the people were panicked. Many governments were unprepared. Hospital capacity was insufficient, many doctors and nurses passed away because infected by the virus. The economic situation goes to a crisis. The students study from home, and people cannot go out to work. Many companies went bankrupt, and a lot of people ended in jobless, which resulted in food insecurity. Governments were unprepared, and thus, failed to overcome the situation. The death number increased day by day. The governments were hardly telling people to change their everyday habits. Do we realize it? Climate change resulted in the increasing events of natural disasters, flood, drought, landslides, hurricane, cyclones, and forest fires. Also, the coronavirus spread is promoted by the changing climate. Climate change also causes a sudden, an emergency situation, just like the COVID-19 outbreak. However, in most cases, the governments are not always well prepared to face the hazard, and many times lack medical facilities and educational infrastructure. This also results in financial and food security of every individual. The climate change disaster has been going on already for years, while the new coronavirus just emerged in recent months. However, both need serious preparation. The two emergencies are in fact quite similar. Both have their roots in the world's current economic model. The pursuit of infinite growth, at the expense of the environment on which our survival depends, and hence, both are deadly and disruptive. In fact, some may argue that the pandemic is part of climate change, and therefore, our response to it should not be limited to containing the spread of the virus. What we thought was normal before the pandemic was already a crisis. So returning to it cannot be an option. If the COVID-19 needs better and improved healthcare facilities and spending, climate change mitigation actions need much more than COVID-19. If the COVID-19 demands more from the government's budget, so does the climate change. If the COVID-19 needs a food security guarantee, governments should focus more on climate impacts on agriculture and food supply. If the COVID-19 needs regulation, much more regulations are required to be mandated over industries and organizations violating rights over climate change actions. If the COVID-19 obliges new habit from the people, the climate change mitigation requires more human habitual change than anything else. Maybe the COVID-19 pandemic can disappear within a year or two. But climate change may last for hundreds, or even thousands of years to come. So, what lessons can we learn from the COVID-19 pandemic happening this year? How do we deal with more pandemics in the future that may come? And how can we handle more hazards that may come along with the long period of climate change phenomenon? The coronavirus outbreak is part of the climate change crisis. Therefore, climate action should be central to our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Come, join us and discuss it at the 5th International Conference on Climate Change 2020.